films are part of POV Season 7. They premiered this past November. They have gone on to be honored by the Academy as one of the 15 shortlisted documentary shorts, top films of the year. Bravo. So I just wanted to start on that front and have you speak with the audience about these stories, how you came to them, and why you knew this was something that you wanted to make a documentary about. So I'll start with you, Jacquelin.
Yes, I'm Jacquelin. I'm the director. I have been a journalist most of my career. When my mother and I, when I was young, my mother and I immigrated from Mexico to El Paso. And so I think immigration topics and migration have always sort of been a part of my DNA, especially because I was living in the U.S. undocumented and sort of experienced being undocumented and being deported and then coming back and fighting. And so, yeah, so having been one of the ones who made it, I've always sort of tried to seek out these stories that are civil rights abuses or migration. And so, long story short, I was spending more time in Spain, and I was really surprised to see that they were dealing with the same the same issues that we're dealing with the Mexico-U.S. border. And a lot of the treatment of immigrants and the immigration topic can be very similar and quite negative. And so I thought that I needed to do something out of Spain. And I came across a profile of the mortician who had spent the last 25 years returning the bodies of Moroccans. And I thought that I was just going to profile him. And when I was able to finally get his permission to film, I just thought that the story was so much bigger. And he started introducing, it was like an onion. You just sort of peeling the story more and more, and I was able to sort of meet a lot of the people that do this work. So that's sort of how it started for me.
Rashida and I are both parents, and we're both storytellers, and we have kids. And I think one of the first things you think about as a parent is your kid's safety, especially in Southern California, where there's a lot of water and so many pools and so many kids drown. So there's a swim teacher in our city named Bill Marsh, and everyone talks about him. He's an incredible guy, and we took our kids there to learn how to swim, and it's something that just seemed sort of like a safety measure, and something that seemed very quotidian and mundane and ordinary suddenly became extraordinary. And that was truly a testament to Bill, who's just a profoundly brilliant teacher. As the week went on and our sons were struggling and learning how to swim and then learning how to fly, ultimately, we found that the lessons and the instructions that he was giving to the kids were sort of like these universal truths for us as middle-aged people going through life with our own struggles. So it just became suddenly very, very deep, and we thought, oh my goodness, we have to get this on film, and I'm so glad that we did.
I would love for you each to kind of talk through like the nuts and bolts, right, at the kind of the production side of things as you were approaching telling these stories. And I'll start with you, Will, this time to speak through, I guess, some of the more practical considerations that you and Rashida had to undertake in capturing this film.
It was during the strike, so we definitely had time. And we were looking for the right location, and we were, making a movie is like climbing a mountain, and that's not the hard part. It's just finding out which mountain to climb. We knew that they wanted the movie to be built around Bill's life lessons, and we wanted to make it mainly around the pool, and we wanted the viewer to feel like they were free and learning how to swim from Bill. So we had a very focused, sort of distilled POV. With that said, you hope that it's interesting because you just don't know, because it is very, very, very contained. Yes. So you are taking some sort of risk thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to be very focused. and very simple, and hopefully it lands. And you don't know with the kids what you're going to get. I mean, we had, with Bill, we sort of cast the movie, but we really trusted him, and it was really who was available too and willing to, be in the film. It turns out a lot of kids were willing to be available and be on film because they want to learn how to swim, and they want to learn how to swim from Bill. But, as a storyteller, you're racked with tons of, at least I am, you're racked with tons of doubt and fear before you do anything. And I remember, 5 minutes before we started the movie thinking like, oh my gosh, this was maybe a terrible idea for a movie. Why did we do this? And then Zippy walked in. I thought, oh my gosh, well, now we have a movie. And the kids were just magnetic. And the truth is, I think if you filmed kids the week after, it would be just as interesting in a different way. I just think kids learning how to swim at this age of life is incredible with Bill, So that part, those fears were sort of allayed early on, where we felt like, oh no, it is interesting and it is funny. And the whole thing felt like an opera. It felt like this watery opera that felt contained. But it was a little scary because I thought like, oh, this movie is kind of just going to take place in this one spot, and I hope that we can fill it. And the truth is, film is a team sport, and we have the most incredible cinematographer, and we have the most lyrical, visceral editor, and we have the greatest all-female producing team, and we have the best sound editor. And so like, when you're a director, your job gets a lot easier when everyone is so good, because you just let them do their jobs. And so for Rashida's worked in documentary film before, and has enormous guts in the edit, which I really admire. She is not afraid to be, vigilant about the story, and she's not afraid to cut. And we wanted that because we wanted it to be super lean. So all of these elements came together. But yeah, we shot it in our hometown. I mean, it's really like a love letter to Southern California. And it was, a lot of films I think are impossible, and a lot of films never get made, most. In this movie, once we got into it, everything really came together. It was just finding out which movie we wanted to make.
Jacquelin, talk to us about this mammoth film that you were able to capture and make a short.
It really started by me reaching out to Martin and filming with him over a period of months. And a lot of the young men that were dying were actually, at the moment that we were filming, were actually from Algeria. And it's a little bit complicated, like government-wise and policy-wise, because Algeria does pay for repatriation of bodies and Morocco doesn't. And so Algeria works with 2 or 3 morticians specifically, and those were not Martin. So for the time that we've decided that when Martin finally said, yes, let's film, he actually didn't have very much work. And so it was during that time that I was like, well, I still think I need to meet families that are going through this hardship. And so after he introduced me to the NGO, which is the woman answering the phone, and she works with Faisal, who is like the Moroccan man who lives in Spain but travels to Morocco to help her. He's also a volunteer. So Martin introduced me to Maria Angeles introduced me to Faisal, and I just started spending a lot of time with Faisal, with and without the crew. And then the crew came together. Sorry, bear with me. The crew came together. They are 3 cinematographers from California, and because they're amazing and very good, they're very busy. So I felt like I needed to rotate between the 3, because I never knew when something was going to happen. And so, especially with everybody's availability. So it was very much like domino. I think it's not dominoes, but like a puzzle, because sometimes Martin would be available and sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes Marianas would be available and then the cinematographers wouldn't be. So it was just like constant like coordination, which I think my reporter skills really came in handy, and producing skills. But yeah, ultimately I just one time when we were filming in Morocco, we were filming with families whose kids had been lost for a year. Sometimes I think we met a family whose kids were lost for 2 years, and they were still hopeful that they were alive. They just, when they don't have a body to mourn, they just hold on to this hope that their kid is in some prison, and that that they'll get out and miraculously show up. And those are really hard conversations to have with them. But anyway, so sorry to sidetrack, but eventually when one of the times that we were in Usta, which is one of the places that we were filming, we got the call from Maria Angeles saying that there were 3 bodies that had washed ashore in Murcia in southern Spain. And one of them was Yaya, and his family was actually from Usta, which is where we were from, where we were filming. And so I kind of decided that was, even though this was a really hard moment for this parent, that I needed to go introduce myself and let them know that I was working on this project, and that I wanted to sort of see if he would allow us to spend time with him, because not many people get closure. And if he can sort of show to the world what closure could mean for a family, then that that could potentially make a difference. And he understood it, and so he let us basically join him through his journey and trying to getting his son back. And then I also feel equally as lucky as Will with every single person that I was able to convince to work on this project. Everybody just kind of gave it their all. They all just fell in love with it, and they just worked their magic, which was amazing.
Will and Rashida were working with somebody that they knew, so they had built that rapport of trust and intimacy, but you had to build that very quickly with someone going through probably one of the worst things that was going to happen to him in life.
It was one of those situations in which when you meet somebody and it was just like an immediate sort of connection, and I can't even truly explain why, but we kind of understood each other in this unknown, even we don't speak the same language. I speak Spanish, but I don't speak Darija, so it was Faisal doing most of the translations, but I was able to tell him a little bit of my personal story and why I care about him and these stories. And I think that he could see that I was really genuine. And we did share a lot of tea, as we do in Morocco, a lot of tea and sweets. And I think it was very quick, but also like very rich, because a lot of what we were sort of, the moments that we were spending together were so intense because of the situation that he was going through. And I think sometimes that is what hurries up a connection.
Yeah. I want to talk now about the creative. First of all, please talk to us about your collaboration with your cinematographer, and then also the choice of score.
We wanted it to feel ethereal and sort of like a dream, and that it's sort of coming from your subconscious. And the movie truly, right from the jump, was driven by water and by music. So, we come from water. We're comprised of water. And there's something about that felt so ethereal and dreamy and operatic. Even when we were watching the kids, when we were first scouting the movie and in pre-production, and we would go watch Bill teach and just sort of start to, put ideas together. All of the kids, their fingertips on the edge of the pool felt like keys to a piano, along the edge of the pool. And you could sort of hear the piano and you could hear the music. And of course, Rashida is a very musical person coming from, the greatest music roots, and so
that legendary.
This is true. So we just started to trade, music back and forth, Ravel and lots of Bill Evans and a lot of piano, and a lot of classical, because the whole thing felt like it was an opera. There was agony and ecstasy and despair and hope and joy and triumph and comedy, all of these things that just felt very operatic. But Alex, our DP, we had done a music video with him before, and I had seen a lot of his other work and, advertisements and some other shorts and one feature. And we just, we just told him that we wanted it to feel like a dream, and we knew that we wanted a camera underwater, and we knew that we wanted one in the air and two on the side of the pool, and then also Bill has a GoPro on his chest.
Mm-hmm.
And that footage became so valuable. And Bill is also a great photographer.
Yes.
That footage became so intimate and so raw.
Was that
and
part of the sequence where there's swimming, where we actually see them swimming?
Yes.
All of
Yeah,
those,
both,
that was on Bill's GoPro.
yeah,
Wow.
most of that is from his chest. Yeah. And it all just came together. But really, truly, I think I've said this to you before, Opal, like, you know, when you go to bed at night and you have a dream and you wake up and you don't know where it came from, but you knew that you were the author of that dream because you had it and it happened in your mind and consciousness. I mean,
Yes.
I think in a way that's sort of what we're going for in our work, that we want it to feel like surprising and it came from this dream state.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we were able to communicate that to Alex and Mo and Ethan, our sound editor. So it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard to make anything, and then it's really hard to make something where you feel like everything is on the same page. And it's very rare for me to make anything and feel like it's actually like a reflection of who I want to be as a storyteller. But I think for Rashida and I, you know, we really feel like this is a reflection of who we wanted to be as storytellers and what we wanted to say. And I do not take that for granted because that is rare. So
Yes.
yeah, it was a good feeling.
Jacquelin, this is probably one of the most cinematic, short, like journalistic shorts. I want to put a fine point on that as well, because, you know, you do a significant amount of reportage in here in terms of all the story that's covered. But God, it's gorgeous. And so you made sure to, you said, work with this trio of outstanding cinematographers. How did you all work together to be able to yield what was captured?
A lot of the conversations were driven also by what films inspired us, and what films we sort of were trying to, not that we're trying to do the same thing, but that we were just sort of trying to think about beauty, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a very dark subject. And also what Ahmed is going through, which is grief. How do you show that? And I felt, because this is about the Mediterranean, I felt that being in the middle of the ocean was the most sort of visual representation of how you can sort of show that sense of unwieldiness, especially when he's like waiting and waiting and waiting. I also kind of wanted it to feel like a search, because this is what a lot of parents are sort of going through, right? They're trying to search to find their loved ones. And so I had seen Fire at Sea, which also sort of interweaves a rescue around Lampedusa, and sort of they interweave it with mundane life. And so that was sort of one of the films that really inspired me. And then in terms of like pacing and beauty, one of my favorite films is House Made of Splinters, which is also a POV film. And just like the way that the cinematographers just waited for these kids to sort of live their life is sort of the same thing that I wanted to do, and make sure and let Ahmed and Martine and Maria Angeles and Faisal all have their arc. And I wanted to make sure that we got to know them at a deep level, which was like a crazy feat that I had, you know, that Haley Gavin, the film's wonderful editor, was able to help me accomplish, because that storyboard was wild.
It's been under 40 minutes.
Exactly. And 39:41, here we are. So yeah, it was sort of like a lot of conversations of how can we show grief, how can we show what Ahmed is feeling, and I thought that the only way to really show it is through a rescue and being in the middle of the ocean. Not to mention that the rescue actually made it sort of even like it just made us understand the immigration crisis in a way that had I just focused on Ahmed, while it would have still been a very strong and powerful story, I don't know if it would have translated with audiences that this is a much bigger deal, because the reality is that the world is on the move. While it's based in Morocco and Spain, there's borders everywhere and people are migrating everywhere.
This is the BTRP Media Network.